So today's video is going to be photography tips. Now, this is going to be whether you are using a camera or just a smartphone to get like photos with your family and loved ones. These are just things that you can do that will automatically make your photos better. And things I wish I could tell everybody because sometimes it drives me nuts. So I have a list on my phone here. My first one, and I tell my parents this all the time and they don't listen. If you have an iPhone, don't zoom. Don't do the pinchy zoom thing. It makes the photos and videos awful. Awful. And you can't recover that. Nobody wants to see how pixelated those look. They look bad. And I know a lot of times it's probably because people have not as good a vision, but it's not good. You might be able to recover a little bit if you crop it afterwards, but even then, like, move closer. Don't zoom on your phone. It's awful. That's something I tell my mom all the time. I'm like, I can't use any of the photos or videos you just took because they're really bad. The next thing, people always seem to want to use a grand structure in photos. Like when I'm trying to do a photo shoot with people, or like someone's asking for photos, like of me to take them of them, like when we're at church or something, they're always like, take it in front of this thing here. And I'm like, you're not gonna be able to see that. It's gonna look weird and you're under weird lighting. Like, just sometimes the simplest backgrounds, like a field right in front of a forest line, especially if you're in the shade, in front of like a brick wall, a stone wall, moss covered and ivy covered walls, I love. I know this lighting is really bad right now. The sun is like setting and I don't have a better location, so I'm sorry about that. But all of those make your subject stand out better. Now, if you are wanting just a grand landscape photo, then yeah, having like a gazebo in it or something is fine. But everybody always goes, let's take photos in that gazebo, which in a gazebo is also a horrible photo because it's all shadows on you. Like, how is that? No, just don't do it. Everybody wants those. And I'm like, no, we need simple backgrounds that'll make your subjects pop. I have a friend of mine who takes photos with her and her husband on a tripod. Half the time they're just standing in front of a parking lot or something, or on a sidewalk. They look so good. It's all about the photo you're taking and what you're trying to focus on in that photo. You don't want to focus, if you want to focus on the people in the photo, you don't want something distracting and putting weird shadows and things and just looking bad. That's my thing there. Sorry. With that, when you use like things like structures like a gazebo that I said put weird shadows and things, the same goes for using lighting. When you're inside, people are always like, take a picture of me standing here, and they're right underneath like a direct light. What that's going to do is you got your light source up here, it's going to put shadows right here, which nobody wants, and here, and it's going to look really bad. And even if you have a professional camera, that's really, really hard to recover in post-editing. I had to do it the other day because people hung a backdrop for our Christmas party and they hung it right under the light. And I was like, this is awful. Everybody's faces are in shadow. And I did my best. And it took me forever to mask and pull out the shadows in people's faces in Lightroom. So don't do it. You will not like how you look in those. Unless you're going to look straight up, you're not going to like how you look in those. So either turn off the indoor lights or try and use them as something to like, as a backlight kind of thing. Like, from the other side of the room, like something like that. If you're using Christmas trees behind you, that's kind of different because generally you're trying to get the lights to blur behind you, which means you also need to be way up from it, not right against it, or the background will not be blurred. Even a great camera, if you are right against your background, it ain't gonna be blurred. With that one, when you are using like portrait mode on your iPhone and you want everybody in focus, you gotta all be in like one line. Or you have to scoot a lot further away from the people you're trying to take a photo of to make sure that they are all in focus. Because what happens is, like, especially if you're going to get like a close-up of two people and like one's face is like say here and one's here, one is going to be more in focus than the other because of that blurred background effect. And it happens on cameras too. I still get that wrong sometimes too, especially with this, because it's got a really, really narrow depth of field. And so basically, you know, on a camera, you can change that. On a camera, I'm trying to learn that when you have more than two people, you really want your aperture to be a lot higher. You want it to be like, usually on a camera, you want like f1 point something is usually what you want when you want that really blurred out background. You can still get that with another lens where you still focus on the people, or with another aperture. Like if you're shooting like groups of people, you kind of want it more around like f3, 4, kind of that range, because it's less likely to blur the edges or blur people out. In groups, I think you want it even bigger, which is probably beyond people who are looking at this to just make their photos better. But just trying to explain that because that's something I'm still trying to remember when I take photos of people. Another thing is that When you want to shoot outdoors, again, don't want to shoot in the middle of the day with the same thing as like indoor light. You don't want the sunlight coming down directly on it. You either need to look for like shade that you can be in, or you want to shoot on a cloudy day. Cloudy days tend to actually be better for photography than sunny days. Or if you want to do a sunset shoot, those are great. But what's also great that people don't think about, if you can do it, is sunrise, which I know means you got to like do your hair and makeup early, that stuff, whatever. But you tend to have better photos because you're not fighting, especially if you're in a busy place like a city or something, you're not fighting for space to take photos with everybody else that's there. And then, unlike sunset, where, you know, sunsets, you run out of sunlight or daylight, the sunrise, the sun keeps going up. You still have time to work, even if you didn't get the photos you wanted. And usually it's still kind of a more soft glow morning light. So those are things that could be good too. Let me look at my list here again because I want to make sure I didn't forget any. Also with the iPhone stuff, if you have a Pro model, put it on RAW in the settings instead of in JPEG. And then if you can put it in Lightroom, which Lightroom is free, you don't have to have the paid version to edit photos in it. But if you do, RAW gives you the opportunity to actually change it to look more like what you want, and you don't have to have those awful iPhone edits that it automatically puts on them, which I hate because I don't have a Pro, so I can't change that on mine. Which is why I use my camera for pretty much everything, because I hate how my phone edits things right now. But also, this one's more for the older people too, don't use your iPad. It definitely does not have a better camera than your phone, and just because the screen's bigger doesn't mean the photo's gonna be bigger. And then, I was gonna say something else with that, but it kind of goes along with the don't zoom, you know, that kind of thing. Oh, the back camera. Obviously, your back camera on your phone is way better than your front camera on your phone. So just thoughts there. I know most of you know those things, but just in case you don't, those are helpful tips. The only other thing I really have on here is kind of just focus on when you want to take photos. Most of you are probably taking photos with your family. What do you want the main focus of the photo to be? Do you want it to be the people in the photo, or do you want it to be some grand background? Because most likely, if you want it to be the people, it doesn't matter what your background is. You just want the people there in front. You don't need to have everybody in front of some like great landscape or something. Oh, wow, this lighting is making this video horrible. I'm so sorry. Also, look at how weird this looks on the edges because it's a 16mm, so it's very distorted on the edges, but it's great for this and for real estate photography, which is why I got it. So anyway, that is this video on tips. Let me know if there's other tips you think that are like things that would be helpful even for people just using like their phone or their camera to take photos of their family, you know, like not doing professional work, but just someone who just wants better quality photos of their kids or their family or something. Because I think that these are really helpful. Yeah. But that's all I can think of at the moment. But just remember, especially if I could pick 3 things out of that you should remember is 1, don't zoom on your iPhone. Do not use the zoom on your iPhone. Move yourself if you can. Do not use the zoom, please. Unless it's the one that comes with like the Pro where you can click the different settings. Other than that, don't zoom. Don't use indoor lighting. If you can help it, turn off all the lights and use natural lighting and just brighten the photo later. It'll look a lot better. Especially if you have a camera, you can do that. Any camera can do that. Some better than others, but any can. And then the other one is just the don't look for grand structures. You don't need your photos to be in a gazebo or on a bridge or just because you're at a restaurant or at a location or something. You can have great photos just in front of a wall, anywhere. So just remember that. You want to focus on the people in the photos, then you don't need a big structure and you don't need it to make your photos look great. Sometimes it's actually more distracting. So just keep that in mind. Hope that helps.